Welcome once again to the Tim Modise Connection. And this is where we look at we engage on the situation in the country, as well as talk to people who've got interesting ideas, who've got knowledge, who've got experience, and who make things happen in our beautiful country. And one such person is Bongani Baloyi, the former mayor of the Mid-Val here in Gauteng. Well, the exciting thing about Bongani Baloyi is that he's hardly 35, but he's retired as a mayor. How he does that, I don't know. I mean, I'm still working on this thing, Bongani. But
I think I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate and blessed to be able to serve for 10 years in local government and be able to have built what I did and contributed. And then I can focus on the next sphere of government, which is the provincial government.
Now, I was wondering, actually, thinking about this conversation, this interview with you, that you actually qualify for so many other things. As much as you've retired already as a mayor, you've been there, done that, and I will talk about your experience there. But I was wondering if you are collecting the 350 rands per month, since you also qualify for that.
Unfortunately not. I'm very close to collecting the 350 a month.
Yeah, I thought that could have been an inducement. You see, and you said, okay, I can give up my role as mayor of Mid-Val, but at the same time still qualify for 350. What is your take of the 350 anyway,
Look,
as a means of alleviating the struggles of younger people who are unemployed?
I think it's a means to alleviate, to deal with the real socio-economic experience of our people, but it's not sustainable. So I think government must have a deep appreciation of what it needs to do to create an environment where people can live and be out of the poverty line without relying on government. And I think even its impact is very minimal, even in as much as providing some level of money and securing some level of livelihoods for people, but not when electricity is this high, not when price of oil and inflation and all these things are so high. So I think it's an attempt, but is it the best attempt? I don't think so.
Well, at least in my book, to my mind, and by any objective measure, you're still a young person, we talk about the challenges facing young South Africans in South Africa in the context as if young people are not there. You know, they're on their side.
Correct.
Everybody else talks about what should happen with the situation of young people. What do you think should be South Africa's approach to dealing with the myriad of challenges that young South Africans face?
Look, I think firstly, there's an inaccessibility of the space where these conversations happen for young people. And that those conversations need to happen where young people find those spaces accessible, which conversations are being had by their peers as well. And they must have confidence in that platform, that it could generate the type of ideas and recommendations that could be effective for the improvement of livelihoods of young people as well. And knowing the fact that I think more than 50% of our population is a youthful population. So it certainly does say we need to take seriously the experience of young people. And when we speak young people, Pratim, we often have this image of young people who are unemployed, looking for employment out of varsity. But no one is actually speaking about the experience of a young person in an early childhood development center, or the mother who's still pregnant, whom they must rely on primary health care, whether they have access to it or not, and the level of nutrition they have access to. So I think I'm very happy with starting with that question, because often we don't broaden enough what is the young, what does it mean to be young?
Yes.
And along the value chain of being a young person, what are the interventions government should be putting in place to ensure that when you are 25, 26, you are not malnutrition, you don't have issues of access to either education, sportsing codes, things that develop you as a young person. So I really think young people need to be heard and engaged with.
But you know, Bongani, I'm just thinking that a point can be made that young people do not agitate enough for the kinds of things that should happen to improve their quality of life, right? You mentioned sports, for instance. I observe that sports not much played anymore in schools. Might be revived. I'm not sure. It looks like there is a revival of sorts that's taking place, but in the main, there's no sports taking place. An example. No meaningful opportunities. There are some, of course, but they're not enough, they're not adequate. And we don't really hear much about what exactly young people want. The spaces that you mentioned, that could be the problem. But
Yeah.
where else can we know about this except from the Stats SA and other research bodies?
Look, I think young people are doing an enormous amount in their communities. I think young people have a preference of being community activists than political activists, and more so those who believe they've got value to add and they want to deal with something specific. It's not careerism, but it's to respond to a socio-economic state that they find in their communities. So you find lots of young people in NGO as activists of a myriad of things. And I remember, I think the Fees Must Fall was a most recent reminder when young people are together, the force they have and what they are able to do. But I really think now it has to move away just from activism, but to contest the thing that has brought the state of the country where it is, which is politics. So I'm really happy to see the fluidity of South African politics and many young people coming into the fore, challenging the status quo of politics, which is healthy for our body politics, which could give an avenue and a space to direct the energies of young people away from just the activism, but actually dealing with the thing that has brought us to where we are.
You became mayor of Midvaal. When was this? Was it 20?
At 26.
20, at 20, your
20,
age
I
was
was
26. This
26
was
2013.
2013. What made you go into that space, and for that matter, for the party you represented at the time, the DA, to have confidence in a 26-year-old to run an entire municipality? And we know the number of problems and challenges there. What was it about you that you think gave you the position?
Yeah, look, for the prospect to materialize of a 26-year-old becoming the mayor, the executive mayor of a municipality, one needs to start in 2008 when I formally started being involved in the Democratic Alliance politics. So many people see the 2011, 2013 part, but they forget the latter parts, where one was an activist, was a youth leader, a constituency operator in the DA. So I was well entrenched. I chose the DA because I thought and I felt at that point they were the party of the future. I've got family who's been involved in the ANC, and I found the ANC politics not appealing to me. I found it quite restrictive, that one must prove that you are coming from exile. I mean, when I'm 20, how can I possibly remove such a barrier? So I decided to go where that such a barrier did not exist, where I recognized some of the challenges of that party, but I felt I could make a change in correcting and improving the situation in that party. And I didn't feel that there were those existing limitations that you find in the ANC.
But you know, again, in the context of young South Africa, there would be your cohorts who regard a person like yourself as a house Negro, to use the word. I'm sure this has been mentioned to your face.
Yes.
How do you feel about it? I mean, firstly, the thinking that a person, an individual like yourself, cannot choose to go wherever they want to politically, and if you do, you're called a house nigger. How do you feel about it?
No, in fact, I used to become irritated with those insults, and then started to accept them. And because under no circumstances will I allow an individual to frustrate me in pursuing my own individual agency. I know what I want. I know the change I want to make. And my mother told me, I mean, my mother helped me a lot in this journey. She said, you're not money. Everyone loves money, and you are not money. So that means that some people will hate you. As long as they hate you for standing your ground and pursuing what you believe in, that is good. And that's what has helped me through these difficult times. And now, I mean, that insult does not really do anything to me, because I appreciate that as an individual, you have agency, you must pursue things, you must dare mighty things. And it's for me to shape and be the captain of my destiny. No one else can frustrate that. Only I can do that.
Now, still youthful, 35, and we began this journey of change in the country about 32 years ago with the unbanning of the liberation movements, particularly the ANC at the time, and the release of the political prisoners, our elders, leaders, Walter Sisulu, and of course Nelson Mandela, and others. We're all excited at that time, hoping that, you know, once we embark on this journey of democracy and political freedom, we're going to make things happen for ourselves.
Yes.
And that development is going to shoot up, and all the backlogs of the past, the opportunities are going to be opened up. But the experience, unfortunately, has not been that great. But why do you think we did not do it the right way?
Look, I think you're quite right. History gave us a perfect moment in 1994 for us to chart a future where we expand economic access. We really build a society and a nationhood that defines who we are and the character of this nation. And we're really given birth to concepts and visions such as reconciliation, which pulled everyone to the center and gave a commitment to working towards a new future. But what frustrated this, in my view, one was leadership at the helm. So leadership, I think, is a big result of where we find ourselves as a society and its inability. I think there's also a strong argument to also be made that those who were part of the liberation struggle after liberation and the unbanning should have come back into the country and settled to normal life. And competent technocrats should have been identified who are focusing on one thing, to move from a liberation struggle which was involved in various fights and all these things that they were doing, trying to kill the infrastructure of the country. From a mindset perspective, to move from there to being able to build and sustain and manage and operate is two different things. And I don't think we were ready there. So there were moments of goodwill that was birthed, 1994 reconciliation not sustained, and there were moments where, as a country, dealing with the past, and I think a big part that, never mind the failures of the ANC, but we must always recognize the history of where we come from, and the insurmountable work that needs to happen to undermine the history, because the history has given birth to a citizen, one majority black people who have lived in environments which what human beings should never lived in, and the psychological effects of being in such environments, and how you relate to yourself and how you treat yourself as black people as well. So those are deep things, when by virtue of the color of your skin you could not access certain things. But I think for where we are now, that history is still important, but most important now is dealing with the failures systematically and structurally of the ANC over the past 25 years or so.
Young South Africans, particularly in the black community, you think they are aware and sensitive to the amount of time it's taking for things to improve in our society? You should know, yourself from your own point of view, but also the views of those you interact with. What is their what would they like to see happen?
Firstly, there's a palpable growing sense of frustration towards government and the ANC. And there's an amazing recognition and reconciliation of the environment, material circumstances they find themselves in, and the governing party. There's also a frustration of what must happen now. And this is the space we as Action SA are trying to negotiate our entry into that space, to give an alternative for people to appreciate and have a confidence in this alternative. So in the more engagements we're having with young people, there's that understanding and the conscientization of young people. There's still, at levels that we need to deepen that consciousness of young people to be able to then respond as responsible citizens of the country, to rescue the country where it's going, but also to participate in democratic processes of a country that determines its future. More so their future, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I've read on social media and other articles or opinion pieces written by other people saying that the problem that faces young South Africans, black South Africans in particular, is this whole focus on umjolo and drinking. Groove. Let me use the appropriate word.
Yes.
Groove and umjolo. Is that South Africa's problem, you think?
I think it's a big part of a problem facing young people. Alcoholism, lifestyle, and alcohol and that lifestyle leads to other decisions which have other consequences, increased rate of HIV and AIDS among young people, more and first-time mothers becoming younger and younger as well, a child having a child. So it has all of those consequences which trap and deepen the state of crisis and poverty in black lives, and makes it really difficult for us to move out of that space. But that's a consequence or a reaction of the social environment they find themselves in and how we've constructed societies, and how we've ensured that societies in black communities, there's less fathers. That has implications into the type of society you lead. And the fact that there's less black parents participating in elections of school governing bodies, having an interest into those things that build and protect society. So I really think that's part of maybe it's a symptom, actually, not really a problem. But the real problem in our country, whether it's young people or whoever, it's economic development. Economic development lack thereof has various manifestations that reduce choices for people. If you are sitting at home, not going anywhere, can't go to varsity, you are stranded, and they say the devil's playground is boredom. And then these things start to manifest.
Well, but these things, I mean, economic development would not happen on its own. Somebody must make stuff happen. I mean, you look at other societies. Let me talk about the one that we're very familiar with, the United States, right? You can see that a lot of young people are able to express themselves and become extremely successful economically speaking. So what's holding South Africa back? I just want to give context that in the US, when you observe, is that culture and that society and the system is actually supportive of ambitious individuals, and it celebrates them. They make no bones about it. They even go and identify them and take them through the system, whether they come through sports or creativity or any other means. They'll even take them through the university system, give them scholarships and all the necessary support. So I don't think we have that in South Africa.
Absolutely, we don't. And what has enabled what we describe as the rampant profiteering of politics, which has really eroded all of our social values, norms, and right and wrong. It has bled that. And this stems from a party, an ANC, which has been at the helm of South Africa in terms of politics and leadership, where these things have found expression and also at a later stage found expression in society. So the language of corruption, of buying, of maladministration, and all of these things now become relevant in all of society. So the expression of the dominant leading political party has now found its expression in society, and we've accepted it as norm as well. So then we don't find a system that rewards excellence, hard work. We've got a system that rewards those who are closest to politicians, the patronage, the corruption. And many people are seeing it and choosing politics as the only avenue of leading any successful life. And that's something we need to wrestle away from the ANC to try and redefine our character as a country, our sense of nationhood and national identity, and really craft a state, a state which is built on meritocracy, people who work hard, who success does not depend on where you come from. And that's where we should have been now. The unfortunate part is we are speaking as if there was a void of government between apartheid and where we find ourselves in, because things have been allowed to manifest the way that have manifested.
Do you feel or find that many people your age group think and feel the way you do?
Quite a number of those that are engaged feel the way that they do. But we also need to deepen these conversations in communities in informal settlements and start having these conversations and testing whether people appreciate what that their material circumstances is not an act of God. It's as a consequence of leadership, policies, implementation that has put them where they are, or the lack thereof of all three. So that's a conversation, but people can see that where they are is not a good place. And certainly people want to see how they can improve and who can assist them in doing so. So I still think I'm confident in the young people's ability to be the single positive biggest force in the 2024 elections that alter the discourse of our country.
I want to pick up on something you said earlier on about your mother being of great assistance and support to you as you were looking for a political home and approach and a career in politics. I mean, what are the specific things, not only that your mother taught you, but you yourself learned in life that made you realize that if you want change to happen, you better go in there and be part of it, make things happen, so to speak?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First thing is humility. Humility is very important. Because in any space, you must recognize as a young person, you don't know the full picture. You've got, you don't understand the institution, how it behaves, its culture, and how it got to where it is. And you can only get that knowledge through people. You can read every document, but you need to extract knowledge through people. So as a leader, you need to build an environment where you are able to extract that knowledge through people who give willingly to support you because they can sense that you really want to understand and work towards this. And you can't undervalue experience. It takes 10 years to have 10 years worth of experience, and you can't shortcut that. And there are certain things that as a young person you must forego the media aspect and the popularity, and you must initially focus on the substantive matters. And that's the reading, understanding. So, and the difficulty that people don't tell you about leadership, they just make words or use of words like you must be able to influence. You can't influence if you don't know, if you're not grounded by substance. And the substance that gives you the ability to have technical engagements and with people who have studied this object and to be able to appreciate the environment in a complex environment of local government. So for me, those some of the things that have helped me through this journey and to build a solid work ethic. Because when you are young, you still have the time to work 14-hour day. When you go in there, you don't have a wife, you don't have a child. So that became my work environment, and it was important for me in the first 4 years of my career to solidify that part.
Of course, that is in a practical sense. But I'm just wondering that are there particular life experiences that shifted you and really had a fundamental influence on you to say, I have to do something about it?
Well, this is the question before going into.
Yeah.
So before going into politics, I've always been curious about my environment, why things are the way they are. And looking and observing, I realize as human beings who create a society, who create things. And when closely inspecting those human beings, I realize they're no different to me. There's no material difference here. The thing that determines where they are and where I am is a number of things. One, right person, right time, courage, pursuing it, and starting. And I said, I'm going to do those things because I'm agitated. I want to be part of fixing the problems we face as a country, at least try and fail.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold back. I really believe that I can contribute, and I wanted to start early so I could retire early and enjoy the fruits of my work. That was the big
and
push.
leave and go and claim 350. So.
Absolutely. So you've got these things, but I really wanted to be able to look back and see the manifestations of my hard work.
Yeah.
And I really think that drive to change society and do things differently and not complain from the outside and leave it to others to do.
Sure.
So I really wanted to find myself in the center.
But now, you joined the Democratic Alliance, and it's generally criticized and even ridiculed sometimes as a white party. And it gets worse for people like yourself, who, as I indicated earlier on, would be regarded as France, who are instructed by white interests on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
Did that bother you at all? And did you have that experience when you became mayor and during your stint as a mayor?
My stint as the first few years of my mayorship were the most interesting ones. One, you are 26 and you represent this party. So so I had the following burdens. One of the burden of being from a white party, and you happen to be young. So there's definitely manipulation here. This one is not in charge.
Yeah.
There's some big people.
What
he's
does Bongani
reporting
know?
to.
I mean, he's been ordered around. That's,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So one, I also learned a very important lesson that it's my responsibility to persuade you otherwise with output. I can only do so if I'm patient enough to demonstrate output and consistently so. So I can't change your immediate view now, but I can only demonstrate through output.
But you know, I like what you're saying, which is great. But I doubt very much that these things just happen automatically. You have to have been taught or have deliberately chosen to learn these things. Which one is which? Were you taught? Did you go out to learn? And who did you learn from?
Well, I learned it's self-taught. When I was in the institution, that institution was my life. I had an obsession about understanding the institution, its culture, how it behaves, its historical performance, and some of its pitfalls, so I can correct those. So I made it my business So there was a former mayor I took over from, and fortunately, before he left, I was in the executive for 2 years, so it gave me some understanding. Not enough, but some understanding to know that for my future, I need to bury myself in the substance of the matter and learn. So for me, it was a conscious decision, and everything else was an environment which enabled my learning and developed and in fact accelerated my development with the amount of people, because I chose to have experienced officials support my office. It was not appealing for me to have fresh people coming into my office and to push the PR side of it. I wanted a person who was in finance, who was there for the past 20 years, to come and support my office. So the people I had as immediate support were people who had no less than 20 years of experience in the municipality and in government. So for me, it was self-taught, but it was conscious about it and the environment that I built, because I was very aware that the chances for my success are very few and far between. And how do I improve that? Is through having people who can actually fill in the void that I have.
Mid-Val is in Gauteng, the south of Joburg, in the Val area, and sits side by side with another municipality, Mfuleni. What is the difference? What do you think you were doing differently at Mid-Val compared to at Mfuleni, where they have many more problems than you have in the Mid-Val? What do you think was the difference?
Yeah, look, let me characterize it this way. One, the first, most important is ethical leadership, because that influences the entire institution. The second part was how they'd weakened governance. They weakened governance, create perpetual crisis so they can have endless access to the kitty and steal.
This is where now?
This is in Mfuleni.
Okay.
So I'm contrasting to what we did.
Yeah.
Because one is the ethical leadership on our side. And Mfuleni, it means that Mfuleni has, for the past 20 years, had actually lack of ethical leadership, which have assisted the eroding of governance systematically and intentionally, so you can steal. The weakening of governance you see in many ways. The purging of professional staff, the withdrawal of delegations from staff who must make decisions and centralize all decisions to the mayoral committee, because then the currency is money. And then you have people who don't follow your normal standing operating procedures, your old policies of how you procure and how you follow a competitive process. So then governance was weakened. When governance is weakened, even your monitoring and evaluation is weak, because what are you monitoring? Instead, the monitoring and evaluation always leads to acceptable deviations, because they know why we couldn't get that, because we're trying to steal, and they cover it up with deviations later in the monitoring and evaluation. Therefore, the output of lack of water, lack of electricity, lack of sanitation is a consequence of lack of ethical leadership and weakening of governance.
These things are happening, and now we have the SIU all over the place and other investigations taking place, right? But ideally, we shouldn't wait until things get out of hand before we fix them. I mean, there's a better way, isn't there? What is the better way, you think, of fixing it?
The better way of fixing these problems in local government is scrutinizing carefully the provincial departments of Treasury and Cooperative Governance, which are complicit to the rot in local government. There's reports that you send regularly to the Treasury MEC and the Cooperative Governance MEC. When I was still mayor, upon sending those reports, there was never an instance where there was a proactive engagement to say, Mayor, we found the following report, can you have a conversation about what you face? Instead, when there's a conversation with local municipalities, they're looking at the performance 3 months late, 3 months in the past. So how do you resolve an issue when you are finishing this quarter, you're looking at not the current quarter, but the past quarter? And already you're looking at quarter one, you've finished quarter two, you're going into quarter three. So already the problem is entrenched, you can't fix it. So they can't happen with things as they happen and monitor and move with local government. Yeah. And the third part is that 139 interventions are often political. And in all the record of all interventions, whether Mfuleni, Tshwane, and across the country, there's nowhere where you see a municipality well off after an intervention. In fact, they get worsened because you have now centralized power in an administrator, and there are a team of people who take decisions, and there's not been an administrator being held accountable, by the way, for any of the worsened state. And that you see with an increase of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure.
Now, when you look back at your stint as a mayor and the fact that you went in there when you were still young up to now. How do you feel? Are you proud of your track record?
I'm proud of my track record. I'm proud of my innings. I think if you look at all objective reports, they will tell you when I came in, we had 15 million rands in reserves in the bank account. When I left 10 years later, we had 250 million rands cash in the bank account, financially stable, viable. When you look at the financial index sustainability report, it will tell you we were number 15 when I started, and when I left, we were number 5 across the country. In the Gauteng, the top performing municipality, clean audits, 8 consecutive clean audits. That speaks to the governance. But also look at the delivery of projects that we did. Look at improving access to water, sanitation, roads tarred, in a manner that does not compromise competitive spirit of procurement, but following those correctly. Where when people did wrong, there was clear and decisive consequence management, which was also just as well. Where I tried under the leadership then to really get to the heart of my community and assist them. And this is the community I grew up in, even though I moved from the East End, but this is my community which I still live in. And I must be able to go to the shops, and people stop me regularly speaking about my era, my time.
They were very happy with your performance?
Absolutely. There are always problems. There are always people. And my motto at a particular stage was to keep everyone equally unhappy.
But here's the thing. People might turn around and say, Bongani sounds great. He was a great mayor, mid-val, but he's a politician. Politicians cannot be trusted. One moment he's DA, he's mayor. Next thing he resigns, joins Action SA, and is now chairperson of Action SA in Gauteng. Why should people trust you?
Well, look at my record. I started something, I finished it. I did not leave in the middle of something. I finished my term as mid-val. I allowed for a handover and peaceful transfer of power from my term to the next person who was there. And once I had settled in office, I resigned from the party and took some time out and joined something else, because it's important that one considers the future of the country and the vehicle which is unencumbered that can get to mobilizing millions of South Africans in a way that there's no hindrance of race, it's history, and Helen Zille said this one said this. So you needed to be in a different environment, which I believe is a good vehicle for the future. But I still agree with the sentiments that people should be hesitant in trusting politicians. You must only trust a politician after delivery. In between, you must be extremely suspicious of politicians.
Why is that?
Because you don't want to let your guard down. So what South Africans have done repeatedly wrong over the years is trust politicians on the basis of what they say only. Whilst they even see things unhappening which they promise, they still extend more trust. We must only trust the politician when they've delivered. In fact, that trust must be a very circumspect, very limited, and a sort of trust that is checked on a regular basis whether you still deserve to be borrow that amount of trust. So too much trust with politicians has gotten us where we are now. So we must be very suspicious of politicians, and including myself as well. The only thing that must persuade you is my delivery and output and my actions. If what I say matches what I do, and if it's consistent, and if it's what I actually promise, then you borrow a little bit of trust.
Now, we are here now, going forward, many more decades to come for you and many other South Africans and other older South Africans concerned about the futures of their children and grandchildren. Paint a scenario for me where you will play a role, if you get the opportunity to build this type of society that will make all of us feel happy that indeed we're making progress.
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of society do you want to participate in building, and how?
Look, we want to build a non-racial society where it does not matter your color of your skin. You can be anything you want, where there will be ease of access to multiple sporting codes, to multiple issues of arts and culture and technology, and access to the world in all communities, irrespective of where you come from. As a society where women are free, as a society where the issue of economic emancipation of women is taken seriously, and there's practical engagements or practical steps that's taken to fulfill that in our lifetime. But it's equally a society where South Africa reoriented itself with law and order, where the extremes as we're experiencing now becomes a thing of the past, where law and order protect South Africans and deal decisively with criminals and those who are challenging law and order, where we can know that we are safe and our borders are being looked after, and the people coming into the country are coming illegally, so we know where they are, what they are going to do in our country, where South Africa becomes a superpower in the League of Nations taken seriously, where we build and pivot from the strength of our natural resources God has given us, but equally we're looking at the industries of the future, where we are not only participating in the consumption of green technology, but actually we are leaders in coming up with various technologies in our own environment, localizing value chain and deepening that, and ensuring that there's vertical integration of our people in various industries and economies. And where a commoner can wake up, go to school within 2 kilometer radius, there's not issues of water, sanitation to be dealt with that are not there, where things just work. This is a society I want to be part of building, and I believe the platform of Action SA and being a leader in Action SA in Gauteng gives me that platform to persuade society to arrive at the end of 2024, where we have removed or wrestled significant vote from the ANC, where we have actually captured the aspirations of millions of young South Africans and millions of other Gauteng residents to borrow us the time to remedy and to try and get into government and build for them. So I really hope that we get to the table in 2024 in a better and stronger position as a party to negotiate with those who want to speak about the progress of the party, with those that we can share values with those who want corruption dealt with harshly so, without any limitations or fear or favor. And I believe those are South Africans that we can work with when we get to 2024. And I'm excited, and I believe that the space will be extremely fluid. But one thing that I have confidence in is that the ANC will not be in government in Gauteng in 2024.
Well, very, what can I say, optimistic on your part. We'll see what happens in 2024. But thanks for popping by and spending time with me here. I wanted to ask you about Moroka swallows and other things, but next time.
Next time. So thank you so much.